In Osu, there have always been players that push the boundaries of what seems reasonable, but FGSky is an anomaly. He's never been one of the highest ranked players, and usually isn't a player in the discussion for who the best player is, despite holding the PP record multiple times. He's an outlier in almost every way. His origin, his playstyle, and his setup are all very unorthodox, which is why I think he's someone who deserves a deeper look. FGSky started playing in mid-December of 2012, but only really started setting unique scores in mid-2017, with his number 1 and Welcome to Tricoro system, and his 640 PP play on high time. These plays weren't necessarily insane because they're pure aim or reading requirements, but instead, since they were scores with hidden, double time, flashlight, and sometimes even hard rock, they were almost purely memorization, because the high AR combined with hidden made reading with flashlight nigh on impossible. He wasn't necessarily a prodigy in terms of aim or reading, and even memorization didn't seem to come all that easily to him, with it taking a little over 1,500 attempts for him to get 640 on High Tie 4 mod, and over 2,000 to FC Welcome to Tricoro. This, combined with his already large amount of playtime after 6 years of playing, made his skill a result of pretty much perseverance alone. FGSky has a slightly unorthodox location for an Osu player. He lives in Morocco, which is one of the poorest countries on Earth. It's rare for anyone who lives in a less developed country to become a top player because of all the things working against them, like worse internet or less access to technology. But I would argue that FGSky has something else even more out of the ordinary: his playstyle. FGSky has always memorized very difficult maps, and over the years he's built a reputation for the grind that he puts into maps of all kinds. Most famously, PP maps, which all started with Shiori. It's November of 2017, and FGSky's top play is Shiori 3 mod, which isn't anything too out of the ordinary, especially seeing as it's one of the most popular farm maps of the time. But he was about to start playing the map in a very different way than most. He began to play it with 4 mods, which at first doesn't seem too insane, especially seeing as it's only 56 seconds long, but with AR-11, flashlight, and hidden, there are moments like this. It's nearly impossible to play without memorizing the entire map. And then, on top of that, the insane aim requirements made it very difficult even after memorization. But FGSky was up to the challenge. And on November 26, 2017, he made his first notable play on the map with a 504 PP 1 miss that would have been almost 1,000 PP for an FC, even with only 91% accuracy. He had proven that he could at least pass the map, and maybe even get close to FCing. But he needed to keep working on it. Over the next few months, he put in a lot of time on the map, clocking in over 2,000 attempts. And finally, in February of 2018, 3 months after his 1 miss, the fruits of his efforts started showing. He began by, on February 10th, failing after hitting the first diff spike, which wasn't too unexpected, seeing as pretty much everything after the diff spike is fairly difficult. But it was what he followed it up with that made people start paying much more attention to this play. Because the day after his 500, he set a 657 PP play, which also happened to be his new top play. And then, the day after that, he got a 2 miss with accuracy that would have been almost 1,000 for an FC. At this point, there was both a lot of hype and dislike to the fact that he was well on his way to making Shiori 4 mod the PP record, and maybe even the first 1K. Many people already took issue with the map, and this, paired with his method of memorizing maps, made this play very decisive. The hype was still there though, and he continued to push for the play over the next few days, and got a couple of impressive runs, including a fail with only 20 combo left, and another play worth 685 PP. And then, finally, he did it.
Still PP.
On February 15th, less than a week after his 650 PP play, he had the run he needed. And with over 3,000 attempts on the map, FGSky set the PP record, becoming both the first person to hold a PP record with 4 mod, and the lowest ranked person ever to hold a PP record. He had dethroned Raphus's Necrophantasia play with a 50-second long 4-mod play with 91% accuracy, which made a lot of players upset, not only with FGSky, but also the PP system that allowed the play to happen. But, luckily for them, there was a rebalance currently in the works. In May of 2018, the hidden rebalance was put into place. It nerfed pure aim with hidden by a significant amount. It also made bad accuracy with hidden much less acceptable, because it significantly brought down the amount of extra PP hidden would add for accuracy. Both of these changes were not just direct nerf to FGSky's Shiori play, but also to his playstyle as a whole. This nerf made Shiori 3-mod worth only 767, which was overall seen as a very positive change because most people didn't want a short farm map as the PP record. A lot of people also took issue with this play because it, in a way, went against Osu being a fun game and a rhythm game, because he had essentially memorized the map in its entirety and still got terrible accuracy. At this point, it has to come into question whether or not a play like Shiori 4-mod is even rhythmic. And if the only way to get a PP record was to play a map thousands of times, then many players would just never do it, because they either just don't find it fun, or they don't have the time. The hidden rebalance seemed to solve both of these problems by placing Shiori at the 11th highest PP play and Freedom Dive at number 1. For most players, having a nerf hit them so hard would be a blow near impossible to recover from. But not FGSky. It might seem crazy that FGSky would stick with his playstyle after everything that had happened to him, but what that doesn't take into account is that he'd already done most of the hard work. He had already memorized the map after thousands of attempts, and now he only needed to put in a comparatively tiny number of attempts to get a much better play. And so that's what he did.
Boom! Fuck you! Fuck you! Number 2!
He had once again taken the PP record, this time with a 1 miss and a larger combo. The play would have been worth 916 PP pre-rework, and because of its impressive pre-rework PP and its improvement over the previous score, it was generally pretty well received. This record lasted less than a month though, being taken by Idkey's play on Honesty, but it has still cemented his place as one of the most dedicated players ever to touch the game. Although FGSky made an impressive comeback with his play on Shiori, it seemed fairly unlikely that he would do something similar to it again. Because even if he was to put thousands of attempts into a map like he did for Shiori, there would almost definitely be a rebalance that would take away his record. This also showed in his play count, which took a dip after he finished Shiori. He did make a few notable plays over the next few months though. In September of 2018, he briefly played Haramachi Clover, putting in a little over 600 attempts for a 4-mod FC, but he still wasn't trying anything like the 4,000 attempts Shiori took. He had reached the top 100, and so he mainly focused on more interesting, less PP-oriented plays. He set many number 1s, with his main focus being on easy, and less grindy 3 and 4 mod maps. He had clearly stepped away from memorizing maps that took an excessive amount of attempts. But, oddly, in January of 2019, only 6 months after his record on Shiori, he decided to begin farming pretty intensely again. He started fairly innocently by getting a 687 PP play on Quaver and a 700 on Lonely Go with just hidden in double time. But it didn't stay that way, and in less than a month, he started making attempts on Quaver 3-mod. Now, it is possible to sight read AR11, but when using a 60Hz monitor is near impossible. Even whitecat struggled to sight read AR11 on 60Hz because of the sheer speed of it. This meant that FGSky was likely not going to sight read, and that some memorization would be necessary for him to succeed. This, paired with the difficulty of the jumps, especially towards the end, meant that many attempts were going to be needed. He started attempting it in mid-January, and by the end of the month, he managed to get 712 PP. And then, he went off the deep end again. He became the first person to pass the map 4-mod, with a 540 PP play. For most players, it would have been a cool pass and not much else. But, because of his reputation, this play was not overlooked, and it had many people both worried and excited. There was a lot of hype around whether or not he would farm Quaver enough to make it his new top play, or maybe even the new PP record. But there was one thing putting a damper on it, because almost immediately after the pass, FGSky was nerfed for the second time. The general PP rebalance was put into place on February 7th of 2019, and it thoroughly nerfed short maps with flashlight. It also thoroughly nerfed high AR hidden. All of this led to Shiori being worth only 802 PP and FGSky falling out of the top 100. This, again, would have stopped most players from pursuing a playstyle like the one FGSky used. But he powered through, putting in lots of attempts on a fair few maps in the next couple of months. In May, he FC'd Haramachi Clover 4 mod for 788 PP. He also 3-missed Chica 3 mod for 712 PP. One of his main focuses after the nerf was Lonely Go, and leading up to June he played the map a lot, getting almost 2,000 attempts on it. And on the 26th of June, he got an impressive 777 PP, and then almost immediately after he got Score View 1 out of 822 PP. And then he went off, setting a new top play 4 times in just 2 days, first with an 840 PP play, and ending with an 870. During this time, he also got Score View 1 again, this time out of 915 PP. Then 2 days after, he 1-missed the map, which also made him tied with the hidden double time miss record with flashlight. And then, he finally got the play he was looking for. Now that FGSky had memorized one fiery map, he had also memorized major parts of the other ones. This meant that his retries were much more about hitting the jumps than they were just about memorization, which was probably the main reason he chose them as his farm maps of choice for setting records. He didn't really focus on anything in particular throughout 2018 and early 2019, and there isn't really time to go through every single one of the maps he set impressive plays on, but here's a quick little run through. He put a ton of attempts into Guess Who's Back 3 mod, and in early July of 2018, he ended up getting a number 1 FC for 889 PP. He started putting in lots of attempts on Justadice 4 mod, but he wasn't able to get any insanely high PP plays on the map, likely because of just how difficult it was. He then went on a rampage of impressive scores, including a 3 mod 5 miss on Wizard's Tower, and an easy DTFC on the short Tsukinami. Around this time, FGSky had already started to transform his image of being a simple 4 mod 1 trick, but what convinced a lot of people that he was an exceptional player was his setup. FGSky is currently the only player in the top 50 living on the African continent, and he lives in a poor country. He also plays on a laptop with no mousepad and instead uses a pillow. It's a pretty nuts setup, and getting adjusted to it can't be easy. For example, imagine how the squishiness of the pillow could catch the side of the mouse and halt movement entirely. The membrane keyboard on the laptop is also a hindrance to accuracy, especially for really fast DT maps. He's also forced to play on 60Hz, which makes 3 mod really difficult. Most of the community agrees that playing with a mouse makes it a bit harder to become the very best, but with every single part of the game working against you, it's a whole nother story. And when you put it all together, FGSky's playstyle makes a whole lot more sense. He uses flashlight and persistence as a way to counterbalance all the things stacked against him. It's pretty genius if you think about it. And you have to wonder, was this his plan all along? Becoming a top player in a poor country is almost unheard of for a reason, and yet FGSky managed to overcome it, mostly through strategy, which is something you can almost never say about OSU players. And, finally, after shifting the community perception of him through interesting plays and a crazy setup, he finally settled on one map to farm to his logical end. Justadice. It was short, farmable, and, more importantly, because of its insane difficulty, it was definitely possible to get the PP record on it. He had already passed the map 4 mod, and it seemed doable enough, so he started grinding. First, what was the PP record? Well, in October of 2019, when he started hitting his stride on the map, it was Vaxe's Wizard Tower play, which is worth 1,066 PP. He'd already put in a few thousand attempts by the time October rolled around. He hadn't done anything too extraordinary yet, but, like most of his grinds, after he memorized the map, he became a score-making machine. On the 7th, he set a 918 PP play on the map, with 3 misses and 91% accuracy, which at first sounds very similar to something like his early runs on Shiori. That is, until you realize that Justadice is 1.2 stars higher than Shiori. This highlights 2 things. The first is FGSky's improvement. most importantly in the aim department. He didn't need anywhere near the same amount of attempts because he had gotten much better. But it also highlights the similarity and farmability of fiery maps. He had pretty much played them all after he had tried Quaver and Lonely Go because of just how similar they are. And that, combined with the super simple vertical 1-2s that were easy to read with flashlight, made for a play that took many less tries and gave much better results. And with Justadice, Fiery clearly struck gold in terms of farmability. The first 2/3 of the map is fairly easy for a 9.5 star, including mostly short jumps and a few bursts. And then, when the map should become difficult, it uses perfectly symmetrical jumps to keep the difficulty as low as possible by giving them maximum PP. And then, finally, to get the map to an absurd difficulty, it uses a single really hard section consisting of only 8 objects with absurd spacing. This doesn't make the play unimpressive, it's still extremely difficult, but it does also mean that its PP value is highly inflated. And with him making a 918 PP play, it seemed almost inevitable that 1000 PP would be at least possible for FGSky if he sunk enough time into the map. But the real question was how far he would go with it. And on October 8th, one day after he made his 917, he showed everyone a glimpse of how far he was willing to go. He started by setting a 937 PP play, which is already his new top play, and then, almost immediately after, he set a 1040 PP play, which is the first 4-mod 1K, and it also made him the lowest ranked player with a 1000 PP play. With 2 very impressive plays in a single day, it was starting to seem feasible that he may once again be able to take the PP record, especially since he was only 26 PP away from it. There was only one problem, and that was whitecat, who, just 2 days later, set the PP record at 1138, which made FGSky almost 100 PP behind him. There was one spark of hope, though, for FGSky, because on that same day, he had already set a 900 on Quaver, which was his best play on the map in months, and it seemed like he might be playing very, very well. But that was only a hint of what was to come. FGSky was going to take on whitecat, likely the best 3-mod player and the current #1 player, at rank 25 with a fairly unusual mod combination. He had put in thousands of attempts on this map just for this one moment, and it showed. He reached within a single performance point, but somehow just couldn't do it. And so, whitecat's record stood. He took some time off from farming to do other non-PP related scores, FCing lots of fairly uncomfortable, technically challenging maps. By this time, it was fairly clear that he wasn't the 4-mod 1 trick many had taken him to be during the time he was playing Shiori. And he was even starting to become a very well-liked player, because although he did farm extensively at times, he'd also proven to be one of the best easy DT players, and a great hidden reading player as well. He started farming again in the beginning of 2020, and on January 26th, he did something fairly unexpected and FC'd Shiori 4-mod with 95% accuracy, which is a massive improvement over his previous 91% 1-miss. And then, almost immediately after, he got an S rank on Justadice. He had 5 slider breaks, but not missing on any of the jumps was a huge accomplishment, and with his accuracy reaching an astonishing 97%, he was clearly closing in on a huge play. To try and put in perspective just how good that accuracy is, it would have been 1400 PP for an FC, and if he submitted the play, it would have been 1002 PP, which, although it sounds pretty great, wasn't all too special for him, as he already had 11 1000 PP plays on the map, and he was clearly capable of even more. Around this time, Justadice also became his second most played map after only Shiori. He was on the verge of setting a new PP record, but there was one thing that was certainly not helping: Score V1. FGSky already had a few run-ins with Score V1's jankiness, but it became much more pronounced while he was playing Justadice. He would have beaten the PP record twice, first on February 3rd and then on the 4th, but his score was lower than his previous try both times. If he was able to submit his highest PP play, it would have been 1173 PP. This clearly frustrated him a bit because he decided not to play the map for almost a full month, until finally, on March of 2020, he triumphed above the odds and did it. He had broken the PP record twice in just 2 days, and set the first 1,200 PP play, after being nerfed over and over, after being 1 PP away from beating whitecat, after setting the PP record multiple times but having the game's blatantly broken scoring system cheat him out of it. He had done it. He had broken the PP record, but he had also managed to do one other thing. He had managed to change the community's perception of him. He went from being perceived as a 4-mod 1-trick to being a great aim and reading player, who's also an icon for anyone with a subpar setup. He's become one of the most interesting players ever. And although he abused the PP system to no end, he has still become very well liked because of his other non-PP related plays, and because of the dedication that he clearly puts towards Osu. Obviously, this isn't the end of FGSky's story. Since Justadice, he has gotten 2 more 1000 PP plays, and multiple impressive number 1s, but I'll save that for another time. FGSky went from being one of the most divisive players in the game to someone who uses a genius strategy to succeed with a subpar setup. He somehow managed to become the PP record holder 6 times, and even though his playstyle has been nerfed into the ground over and over, every time he has come back stronger than before. When he set the record on Shiori, it was certainly up for debate whether it was even an okay play. But at this point, it's hard not to respect the grind. All signs seem to say that FGSky never should have become anywhere near as good as he did. But through perseverance and strategy, he became one of the most legendary players the game has ever seen, which is not something you'd ever expect from a simple rhythm game. And I think that's pretty special.